All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this webinar. Like Stormy said, this is my very first semi-solo presentation. I thought I would kick it off with some Hawaiian gear, which I should probably take off because this hat is smacking things around, and I'll take the glasses off too. But I am the new Assistant Director of Professional Development. Stormy, my sidekick during this presentation, is the Director of Professional Development. I am going to get through this alone with a little bit of help from Stormy. So let's just jump right into it. A few mechanics for this presentation. Restrooms are near the rear of the room at the east exit. Just kidding. Practicing for when we are back in person doing trainings. During this presentation, participants will learn more about the nuts and bolts of storytelling, receive vital information on the importance of storytelling and about the Families of Distinction program, learn to apply all of the elements we discussed to create stories for your families or individuals, and receive the tools you need to construct an awesome story for your FOD application. So let's jump into it. What exactly is storytelling? When I personally think of storytelling, I think of people gathered around the campfire telling old fables about heroines or people of the past or the way things used to be. But honestly, storytelling goes way back. It is an ancient art. It is used as a means of persuasion in religious literature. Shakespeare and other literary trailblazers utilized written storytelling along with images to share stories. As you can see here, this is some ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. I wish I could tell you what story was being told during this depiction, but it looks like it was deep and serious. Stormy, do you have any idea of what may be being discussed?
It is probably, I'm way off base, but I feel like the lady in the front is telling everybody what to do, yes, including what I presume is an Egyptian god there in the back. So powerful lady, right? Maybe, yes. But I think that's also powerful. Why context and data can be very important in storytelling, yes. In addition to it, because we are probably way off base, honestly.
We probably are, but based on storytelling, we're guessing what it might be. This is a photo that many of us can relate to, not because it appears to be the very first effort at implementing social media, but it is a depiction of, and this is a German name, I'm going to try my best to pronounce it correctly, Franz Sava Holta. I'm hoping it's right. It is a depiction of the Decameron story, which is an Italian short story, which is not such a short story by today's means, by Italian author named Giovanni. The painting is set in the year of the plague of 1348 in Florence, Italy. The original story follows 10 wealthy young people who abandon their city for a luxurious country retreat to get away from the plague. Once they're there, they attempt to banish their sorrows by communicating with each other through nature, singing, dancing, and telling stories. In all, 100 stories were told. So like I said, not really short stories, but by that time maybe was considered short stories. But I say all of that to say that during the pandemic, we all really had to move to telling stories, doing conferences virtually. We all remember virtual conferences. Doing events, food drives virtually. We really had to market our events and use storytelling to really get messages through the pandemic, and all had to kind of come together to tell those stories in a very different way than we were used to.
I think it probably made us a lot more vulnerable in storytelling because we needed to connect with other people. So we found a lot of creators coming out of that time, discussing their own personal stories. And there was a big need, obviously, in our communities going through that. And everybody was a little scared, probably very similar to the people in this image, for sure.
Exactly. So the basic definition of storytelling is a series of facts told with emotions and details. A quote here from Terry Ebel says, organizations often tell stories that really grasp facts, the facts part of this definition. These fact stories give us a play-by-play of what happened, but without emotions and details, it becomes more like a timeline than a story. The emotions and details are what bring that story to life. And I think during the pandemic, it was more like a timeline. We were using a lot of data. We were using a lot of time frames to tell a story, but the pandemic really did kind of force us to give more emotion, to give more detail into our stories.
I mean, it's a good example of why data can be really scary. Outside of, looking at numbers sometimes can be incredibly intimidating. All of those numbers probably created some sort of fear. And adding the emotion and the story behind that allowed for connection and empowerment, I think.
Absolutely. Especially
and those success stories that came from the frontline workers and everybody who still had to go in and interact. Those stories is what made us feel hopeful outside of just the statistics.
Absolutely. So why is storytelling so important to our work in general? Simply put, storytelling connects us to our core brand promise, helping people, changing lives. Through stories, we can learn from each other's experiences. Stories are the reason we are compelled to give to a certain cause. Storytelling makes us feel empathy, happiness, or sadness for fictional characters that we've never met before. And most importantly, as it's related to community action, story helps us to solve problems by providing opportunities to try different actions that might lead to different outcomes. This is especially true if another person is helping to co-create this story, which is what you will be doing with your FOD application. And really also, it's the reason that actors are typecasted from a good role. I would be interested to hear from the network some actors or characters who have been permanently typecasted because of a good story that was told or a good role that they played.
Yeah, so I think it goes even further than that. Like, think about the last movie that you cried in. Can you share that with us? Or the one that made you laugh the most?
Yes.
Or that gave you that memory. I can think of many times where storytelling has helped me in my personal life or has stuck with me in some way or another. But we connect to the movie because of the story behind it and the people who are portraying that.
Absolutely.
I think our August Rush is like one of the first things that comes to my own mind. It's kind of an unknown and obscure movie that Robin Williams was in, but he sang the Moon Dance song by Van Morrison. And for whatever reason, that movie has always stuck with me because of the magic of, reconnecting this little boy with his family through song. And it connected me even further to some of my own memories of enjoying that type of music with my mom. Imagine, she's a hippie. My name is Stormy. So those kind of things. So you guys, if you think of stories that you find powerful, please share those in the chat with us.
Or any character. I would say pretty much all of the characters from Game of Thrones, they were all played so well. When I see them in other like serious movies or even in comedies, I'm like, what? You're not supposed to be in here. This is not your role. But because I was so entrenched in Game of Thrones that all of the characters, when they're in other things, I'm like, this is not right. This is not how this is supposed to be.
I can think of many villains that every time I see them try to play something good, like if you're a Lifetime movie watcher, Dean Cain always being the villain, like he'll never be able to play anything different for me ever again. Yes, we do have somebody, Shelby raised her hand. I think she'd like to share with us as well.
Let's see.
We do have the chat turned on, right, Haley?
Yes, it should be turned on. Should be available. is everybody available to chat or available to use? I guess we'll notice if we don't see anything.
Were you able to see Haley's question or her raised hand to unmute her?
I do not. Do you not have the ability to unmute? Oh, I see here in the question and answer. It says chat is disabled.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe write in the question and answer if you have any villains or people who have been typecast.
Stand out as, you know, stories that have impacted your life over the years. Okay, Catherine, I see you. Dean Cain was Superman on Dead. But listen, as soon as he switched, it like stuck with me for whatever reason. I have no idea, but you're right.
That's a good one.
I think that's where he got his heartthrob status.
It could be, for sure.
And then I think a whole generation of people were probably heartbroken as soon as he switched to the villain status, for sure. I think you have to be a good villain to also be a superhero, right? Is an anti-hero the thing that we're talking about now, that you can be a hero with some questionable things in your past, which I think we can all relate to inside of community action, right?
Exactly.
Just because you have questionable Lifetime movies, Dean, does not mean that you can't still be a superhero later on.
Exactly.
Okay.
So how can storytelling be used in your work or be used for other reasons? So yes, this webinar is mostly about FOD, but let's talk about other ways that you can use storytelling in your work. In a case study, you're outlining 3 main points, right? You're outlining your background, the process, the outcome. So you're using stories to write, using facts to write stories, but you're using details, you're using exploration. And I think that it's important that, especially with case studies, you have to use facts, but storytelling really makes those case studies interesting. And as it relates to conferences and events, you can put on a great conference, you can put on a great food drive event, you can put on a great job fair, but a compelling story really puts your organization into motion as it relates to those events. And if you don't have a great story, it's hard to get people motivated to join you, to work on the project, or to even get people to invest into your events. Storytelling as it relates to annual reports and impact reports is great because instead of just an annual report or impact report that's loaded with data and numbers, it's a great way to engage your stakeholders and potential funders. And awareness campaigns. We used a lot of awareness campaigns during the pandemic for food drives, for vaccinations, or for whatever it may be. It's a great way to implement storytelling and an easy way to implement storytelling. Marketing collateral is pretty self-explanatory. As many of you know, prior to this role, I was the director of membership and communications, and that included marketing. And you do have to use a lot of storytelling in marketing. It is the new marketing. Storytelling is the new marketing. Also, when it comes to strategic plans, I know that strategic plans is the bane of a lot of agencies' existence. And I know a lot of organizations in general struggle with strategic option. There's a vicious cycle of worrying about what to come up with, what a credible proposed option may be, using SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Had to go back to my marketing degree for that one. And even with the SWOT analysis, it can cause your ideas to get shot down before they even reach paper. So it's kind of a matter of using storytelling to come up with a story of the future. Use your strategic plan to come up with a great story of how this, or what you think the future is going to look like.
Well, and I think that it's, when anybody looks at data, right, you have a spreadsheet full of numbers, everybody kind of, their eyes glaze over a little bit. It's like, numbers can be very scary and intimidating for a lot, right? And that story tells the information that you might not necessarily see in the numbers. And with that storytelling kind of frame of mind, you can look beyond the numbers and use, Roma is huge on this. What's the story that the numbers aren't telling you? And it honestly, like, their storytelling, I'm going to go back to the marketing collateral, right? There is still a very, very strong grassroots effort in this nation for people to truly get connected with resources, right? They had a friend who went to this place, and they have a story about that. And that kind of around the campfire style storytelling is one of the best ways that we get the words out, because they have connected with people inside of our agencies who have had these positive experiences, and they are the best marketers for and for advocating for themselves in that way, and they get to share that with their friends and family. And I think it's incredibly powerful when they hear that. And
absolutely,
you can have 1,000 people show up to a conference, but if it was a boring conference, you're probably only going to get about 500 otherwise. So
exactly, they won't come back.
Good conferences, get your friends and your coworkers to say, that was a great conference, you guys have got to go. We do have a couple other people who say, like, a few impactful storytellers I think it's Peter Capodelli's version of Doctor Who is what Shelby had shared with us.
Oh, yes, that's a good one.
How it's like really stuck with her. And then Melanie told us that Sylvester Stallone, she could only see him as Rocky, and I completely agree with that.
100%. He cannot be in anything else without being Rocky, always. Even the Creed movies, I thought was about Rocky and not about the whole Creed situation. So I was like, yeah, he's always going to be Rocky. Yeah. And he still looks the same too. He's aged very well. Not to get too off subject. And I know, not the organizational standards again, but Category 9 of the CSBG organizational standards states that community services block grant funding confers the obligation and opportunity to tell the story of agency-wide impact and community change, and in turn, the impact of the network as a whole. So our organizational standards say that we need to implement storytelling in everything that we do to create an impact. And now we're going to connect Roma to all of this. This is my Christine spiel of the day. Storytelling is a form of qualitative information. The collection of stories is one way that we can acquire additional data to learn and assess needs, strengths, opportunities, and pathways to understanding poverty. Stories are connectors, and stories explore results. Results, outcomes is what Christine would say if she was presenting this webinar. So let's talk about how we connect our families through stories and family development skills. This is a way that you can prepare for FOD year-round, and not just when we send out the notification in November, December, January. It is important to create a welcoming space for your families. This establishes a sense of safety, but also helps build trust with your families to open up. Ask open-ended questions to your families. I think you can get straight to the point and ask, what is your story? What barriers brought you here? How do these barriers make you and your family feel? You really want to encourage deep thinking and exploration when you are asking these open-ended questions. It shows empathy, and it shows that you are caring about what they are saying. You need to be willing to be quiet and to listen in. Being active listeners is very important. And also wearing your strength-based lens. So you're asking them, what are your biggest accomplishments? What are your strengths? Congratulate them for being courageous enough to come in the first place, to be able to step into that office and ask for help. And focus on the fact that they are resourceful and that they are resilient. and that they are resilient through their adverse situations.
I think like this specific item, right? The strength-based lens is definitely a two-way street for our agencies and our clients, right? Empathy burnout is a real thing, and it's really easy to think about all of the bad stories that can come from some of the situations we've seen in community action. From we're carrying the weight of those things, but anytime that we look at a situation with a more positive outlook, it can impact our mental state as well. So going into situations, helping people identify their strengths builds that confidence, right? And they may not have been in a position sometimes their entire life to ever identify their own strengths, and they're depending on us to do those things. Building that confidence will create an open environment because it feels like they are being judged for the good things they've done in their lives, not the bad things. Congratulate them again for coming, and thank you for reaching out so we can help you in these kind of ways. And it's incredible what you've been through and where you're at today. Allows them to tell you a lot more about what's going on and how we can connect them with the resources they need. And I think it's one of those burnout things, right? If we just constantly think about what we can't do or what bad happened to us, we forget to identify what we can do and what we did do. And to know that this too shall pass is pretty powerful. And Melanie has asked us again, what is ROMA again? So it is results-oriented
management accountability.
Management accountability. Thank you so much, Haley. I'm kind of new to the community action world, if anybody doesn't know that. But essentially what we're talking about when we talk about ROMA is all of the actions that we do have to have results to them. And so if we say that we are going to provide X service, what is the intended result that we are going to get out of that and the impact it's going to have? And that we're constantly looking at things in a full storyline where we can connect data to the stories inside of that. So looking at the full cycle of each action having an impact. And in a lot of industries, there's similar related results-oriented management, right? So not just going in and saying, oh, I'm going to do a food drive, right? Well, if you go into it with the concept of I'm going to do a food drive, and you're not thinking of how many families do we want to serve? What's the need for those families? Are we going to have enough food to fill for all of the need of the community? Or are we going to be short? You're going to be missing opportunities inside of that. So looking at the full picture and starting again, I think Haley just had it on the screen where we start with the assessment. What's the need of the community? And then we move through the cycle. And you can technically move through, if you start backwards, sometimes it makes it a little bit more challenging, but you may find yourself in a position where you're mid-implementation and then you're like, wait a minute, where are we going to receive our results or whatnot? So, and storytelling can start that ROMA cycle, right? Somebody comes in and we've assessed that there's a need at that point through that storytelling. And then what do we do to meet that need, and how can we measure the results at the end of the day and the impact that it's had on the agency and the communities that we're inside of.
ROMA really focuses on results and outcomes because really how do you know if you're doing well as an agency? How do you know if your clients or if your programs are successful if you're not measuring the results and the outcomes afterwards? So it really focuses on, I shouldn't say focuses, but puts emphasis on results and outcomes as well.
Nailed it.
So many of us have been with community action for a while, but there are also many who haven't, and we're asking you to write a Families of Distinction application. But what is Families of Distinction? Every year we ask that each agency, and I want to put emphasis on every agency, we would love to have a Families of Distinction at our annual conference. that will be honored at the IACAA annual conference for overcoming great personal and social obstacles in their pursuit of self-sufficiency. The FOD program illustrates how the Illinois Community Action Network empowers families to identify and utilize their personal strengths to enrich their lives. Each family will be honored with a dinner and an awards banquet. The program book features stories on each of the families and a short documentary, which will be shown that will feature 6 stories of the families that mirror the reporting domains. Each family is then recognized for their accomplishments. So now we're moving into the Families of Distinction application process. So each agency is tasked with selecting a family along with submitting a narrative, a quote from the family, and a candid photo of the family or individual. And I am going to pull up the application really quickly for you guys, so you can kind of get a better idea of what we are talking about if you have not opened it already. Here you will see it. Oh, go ahead, Stormy.
Can I add one thing about our family of distinction? It does uplift the families that we have served 100%. But I think it also tells the story of your agency. Yes. And the people inside of your agency and the work they've done to be that hand up and not hand out. I think if anybody can tell us who quoted that in the chat. Yes. Extra points. This is not a great assignment, but
yes. Extra credit if you know who said that quote. A hand up, not a hand out, as it relates to community action.
Yes, and it does, it highlights the good work that you're doing, and can be related back inside of your needs assessments, and your action plans and the results that you do inside of your annual plans. So this is kind of a twofold activity where I know this application can look a little intimidating initially, but it's all information that you can reuse in other places.
Yes, free marketing for your agency. As it relates to the actual application, you'll see here that there is some submission criteria. You must submit a photo of the individual or the family. The application must be completed in the fillable PDF document, not handwritten. We do copy some of this information directly into the program book, so we do need it to be in the fillable PDF. All fields and questions in the form must be completed and answered. And you must include a family quote or from the individual. And this is more so because we're using the family for storytelling, as long as we're in addition to using you guys for storytelling as well. It can be a sentence, it can be a couple sentences, but we really want to hear how the family was impacted as well in some way or form. And you'll see here, it's not a very long application. We do make it so that you can click in, fill it out, save it, send it back to us, and you'll be good to go. But let's talk about the selection criteria for the application, which I'll pull it back up here in a minute so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. The family or individual must embody many of the characteristics of stability, including employment, meaning, do they have a living wage job? Are they getting bonuses? Are they getting raises? Do they have benefits? Not just did they get a job and that's it at the end of the day. They're happy in their job. They enjoy doing their work. And that relates to the workforce award. Education and cognitive development. Did they get their degree, their GED, or some type of certificate that led them to get employment? That is the Achievement in Education Award. Income and asset building. Savings, do they have a savings? Do they get an increase in wages? Do they even have a bank account? That's the Financial Success Award. Housing of choice in a safe community as self-defined. I think this is important to note because a safe community is based on the family or the individual. So some people might not consider an area a safe community, and other people have lived there their entire lives. So it may be considered a safe community to them. As long as they feel safe, that's the housing of choice that they want, then that category is fulfilled for them. Health and
not just like in the community, right? You got to think about, there's trauma situations inside of the current home. are they now in a safer home
place,
and not just the location of it, but is the home stable, right? Do they feel like they have security in housing?
Exactly. Health and social behavior development, apparent use of healthcare, physical and mental, and have overcome significant health issues. This one it has been a little bit tricky in the past, and that's why we put physical and mental in there. We ask that you don't share too much personal information. If the family does decide to share that with you, that's great. But we do like to keep privacy of all of our families as well, and like to make everybody feel comfortable. So as long as they are using healthcare and they are staying up to date with what they need, and that category is fulfilled, and that is the Wellness Award. And civic engagement and community involvement. Once again, this is one of Christine's favorite categories. Are you a registered voter, active community volunteer, a classroom volunteer? Do you have a library card? Which I have admitted to Christine that I do not have a library card.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really think about this aspect of all the time. It's not the first thing that pops in your mind when you're thinking about success, but being involved in your community can be a great source of confidence building, right? Understanding that they have strength in their story and the information they share and the impact they can make inside of their communities. It's what community action was built on, for us, by us, in the first place. So this can be huge. And I think our community action agencies do a fantastic job at getting them connected with the right resources. And it can really be a game changer in helping lift people out of their current poverty situations by connecting them in those ways. And I think it's just sometimes a lack of information, and our agencies have access to that information to share with those folks.
And it also gives them a voice to feel like they are heard within their community, that they belong in that community. So I also believe that community engagement is very important.
And you need to get your library card.
I do. I have, back in the day, probably about 10 or 11 years old, I got a gingerbread book that I lost. And I was scared that I had some type of fine, but I did find out that all fines have been maybe not wiped, but you can't be denied a library card because you have fines. So I need to look into that.
And I think that is one really, probably, I don't know if you want to say, it's not just unknown, but your library is a great resource of free information and free access to so many resources as far as the internet goes. And how many people can be intimidated by those fees? If you think about the economic, the financial success line as well, getting access to bank accounts because of previous negative fees, that stops people from even looking, right? Like, oh, I've already made the mistake. So when you find people who have overcome those challenges, it's really great to uplift those stories for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about these awards in our last slide. And while all families will receive an award and will be acknowledged at the FOD event, 6 specific families will be selected to represent the following areas of achievement: the Workforce Award, Achievement in Education, Financial Success, Housing Stability, the Wellness Award, and Community Engagement Award. And if anyone was here during 2019 when we did a FOD video at the conference, it was a real tearjerker. Pretty much everybody cried. I cried when I went and did the interviews with these folks. The audience cried during the FOD event. I just thought that I would share a clip so you guys have an idea of kind of what we're looking for in a family that receives these awards. This gentleman here received the Wellness Award, and I will show you a clip from his video. He was served by Illinois Valley.
Because they don't have their mom, and that's hard for them too. So Illinois Valley through Macoupin County, they've helped me with LIHEAP, transportation to get places, schooling with my kids, propane for our gas to keep our heat going, and all kinds of things, gas vouchers to get to school, just all sorts of things they've definitely helped me with. Sometimes it takes strength to ask somebody for help, and it's hard to dig that strength up, but everyone has it. Everybody has it to make it. So, and man, I remember one time I was not feeling good, and he came up to me. He's like, "Dad," he's like, "You want me to help you get some medicine? You know, when you, sorry guys, but when your kid says that to you, you know, something like that to you, King. It's rough, man. I just don't ever want them to have to go through an addiction, because the opiate addiction is such an epidemic, and it kills so many people. I just want them to live a healthy, clean life and to just be happy.
We do have on our YouTube channel, if you guys don't subscribe, just search of IACAA, all of our past FOD videos, which is a great way to get the kind of creative juices flowing. I know when we ask for this application and you have to think back to what's happened in the whole year, it could be challenging to find that one family that you want to exemplify in some way or another. But sometimes watching those videos will help remind you of all of the great things that you've done this year. So we do encourage you to go check those things out for sure. There's one thing that I want to kind of address with storytelling and where and why data kind of comes. And when I think of like really powerful stories, I can't help but think of my own personal stories in a lot of different situations, but also a representative Katie Porter, right? Like she advocates for low-income families all the time. And I think she highlights a lot of what we will be doing with FOD is they come across so many different challenges in their lives, and to have an opportunity to uplift them is insane. And I recommend you guys checking out some information from Katie Porter as well, and watch the way that she uses data as a powerful way of telling a story and making people connect to that story.
Yes,
but
a good example.
Man, are we feeling kind of emotional after hearing him talk about his kids and him getting some medicine.
That entire video from 2019 was very emotional. All of the stories were great. It was great storytelling. And it was, all of them were emotional at some point. So I was, like I said, the interviewer for that, and it was rough to get through. But, and I guess that kind of leads us into connecting the importance of storytelling to our Families of Distinction application. So let's talk about why great storytelling is so important for the Families of Distinction. It's because storytelling allows you to paint a picture of how families have overcome adversity and become self-sufficient. Readers have different ways to understand stories. Descriptive firsthand accounts to compel listeners is probably the best route to go. And stories have the potential to engage people in meaningful discussions. Uh-oh, did I miss one? A few things to consider when you're developing your agency's narrative: be relatable. Never use the interview process. This can cause individuals to get a sense of stage fright and make them feel as if they're being interrogated. And connect with your clients, even if that means just being an active listener or agreeing with them, telling them, man, that sounds like it was really hard for you. How did that make you feel? What can we do to help? Is an easy way to be relatable as well. Conveying emotion in your narrative and not just facts. A main focus of your story should be to help your audience relate to what the family is feeling so they can better understand the programs offered by your agency. And opening up about personal struggles can be difficult for families. Explain the purpose of this narrative is to honor their achievements. A few more things to consider is to describe the obstacles. To make a story compelling, your family's obstacles should be back to your agency's mission. So once again, we talked a little bit about it earlier. You don't have to toot your agency's horn, but also this is about how your agency helped the families, and we want to hear about how your agency was able to help these families. And
It
also
goes back to
go
Roma,
ahead.
right? Like it's the results oriented. That's the
Yes.
result of you living your mission. So
Exactly.
it all really ties together in that sense. And listen, you should toot your own horn. I know we like to be humble about things, but celebrate your own successes. You deserve that for all of the hard and emotional taxing work that you do. But we do have a quick question as well, Haley.
Sure.
Melanie asked if the application that you're showing, is that for, can you bring the application back up?
Sure.
Is that for this year's conference or next year's?
This is for this year's conference. Applications are due on March 6th. So this is a recent application. This is the one that is coming up here due soon, just a couple of weeks.
And these will typically, who submits these typically? Our EDs, is that right?
No, it's kind of a mix. Sometimes it's our EDs, sometimes it's family and community development staff, CSBG coordinators. It just depends on who the agency was working with during that time.
Absolutely. So it's really open to anybody to fill out when you're thinking about these individual categories and families that may fall into them. And are you going to review with us like what these buttons mean?
Yeah, and I while I have this application up, I'll tell everyone too that these are meant as a guide. So you can see here that you are able to click into these, but these are meant to help you get through the application. So I don't want anybody to think that their family cannot be a nomination because they're not thriving in all categories. This is simply used to help you understand your family and to know what data points we're looking for and what you should be looking for when you're talking with your families. And
I like those little descriptors inside of there that's like, this is what it looks like to be thriving or in crisis.
Exactly.
And they're not the same in each one of them. They're specially designed to match each category that we're trying to uplift in this area. The other question that we had was Melanie asked when our conference is.
Our conference is May 1st through the 2nd for the main part of the conference, but the actual FOD banquet is April 30th, whatever that Sunday is before the
Yes, the 30th. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the banquet that we invite those families in for, where they are recognized, as we spoke about earlier. Thanks for the questions, Melanie.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about Roma too, and describing the solution. How did the agency help? Tell that story, show an FOD success story. So once again, we're showing the outcomes, we're showing the results of your agency. And we really want to highlight that during this event and in our narratives as well. A few more things to consider when you're constructing your story: be as descriptive as possible. Use the basics. Many of these we learned in elementary school: the who, what, when, where, and why. How did you meet your family? We want to know about that. We want to know what brought them into your office, what brought them to you specifically. What obstacles has the family overcome? What steps and programs did the family take to overcome these obstacles? Why were these steps the best steps for the family to take? And how long did it take for the family to overcome these obstacles? And these are just a few questions. You can ask whatever questions you think are right for this, especially after reviewing the application. But we really want to emphasize that we want every agency to nominate someone, and we want a very descriptive story for us to be able, because we're honoring these families as well. We're putting on this event, and we want to show the nation. We want to show the Community Action Network what we are doing. This is a very unique program to IACAA that has been nationally recognized, and we want to continue the success of this program. All right, that wraps up my FOD presentation. Do we have any questions? Does anybody want to ask anything in the question and answer about FOD? Did I clear anything up? Was it clear as mud? I want to know what questions you guys have.
We do have one from Nicole. She wants to know if we'll have access to the PowerPoint.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We will send it out in an email, but also we can probably post this recording on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, maybe even on our website as we continue to help that grow.
Yeah.
Any other questions or inputs? Powerful storytellers that help you in any way, you're welcome to share with us as well.
And any feedback also, we will happily take any feedback that you have also.
Yeah, don't hesitate if you're in the middle of filling out that FOD application and you're like, wait a minute, does this apply or not, to reach out to Haley or myself, or even Veronica, who is leading the charge for our conference. So I kind of help guide you through that. We don't want the lack of information to be the reason that, an application isn't considered because you were unsure. So please, again, do not hesitate to reach out. But
absolutely. And I am also more than happy to walk through the application step by step with you if you need to, especially if it's your first time. Because like Stormy said, it can seem a little bit intimidating when you first look at the application, but it's pretty short and it's pretty easy to get through once you get started. So if you ever need any help, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm more than happy to help.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate you indulging us in our storytelling podcast / webinar / Haley's beach vacation. We do appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and we really hope that when you walk away from this webinar, you really think of things with maybe some rose-colored glasses in some ways, looking for those strengths inside of the family that can help rejuvenate you in the mission of your agencies. And remember that stories are gifts. They are gifts from the storyteller. And it's a gift that exemplifies the trust in the relationship that you have built with that person. And they are powerful gifts. And so I think treating them with that type of reverence helps you to feel like you are important and empowered in their story as well, to help them, again, hand up, not a hand out in their situation. So thanks for joining us, but I'm going to do a shameless plug. We are going to continue our webinar series in March, where we will talk about how we meet customers where they are in their story. But by gaining all of the information we need in an efficient way and providing the best customer service. And this kind of storytelling theme will continue in that webinar, because I think everything that we do really shows that real impact can be shown in those stories to motivate people like Haley's talked to us about today. So from myself, thank you so much. And Haley, I think you have a farewell.
Yes, thank you all for attending, and we hope to see all these FOD applications coming in here soon, at least by March 6th. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.